In the heart of Boston, where tour buses idle and street performers echo across sidewalks, there stands a building most people avoid naming aloud, the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. A landmark on brochures, a curiosity on Google Maps. In person, it looks like authority carved into stone, columns like vertebrae, windows shuttered behind velvet dark glass. Locals call it the Lodge, the way sailors say the sea, with respect that borders on fear. Publicly, nothing sinister happens here. Charity galas, award dinners, ceremonies with polite applause. That's the surface. Yet the former maintenance worker I met in a Quincy cafe, who kept his baseball cap low even indoors, claimed there were rooms never charted, chambers where even mid-level members weren't allowed. Doors that don't behave right, he whispered, then laughed like he regretted speaking. Something is off. The building's official blueprints stored in City Hall skip entire sections like pages torn from a novel. The years 1898 to 1903 are missing from the municipal register entirely, a hole where history should be. Even the architects' names won't stay put. Different books credit different men, like the truth is wearing masks. Cross the street to the Museum of Fine Arts Archives and there's a dusty complaint from 1921. A resident reporting mechanical noises beneath the lodge after midnight. The document ends abruptly, stamped, removed. Clerical discrepancy. No follow-up. Rumours cling to the foundation like mildew. Some swear there are levels beneath the basement, tunnels that thread under Beacon Hill, relics of prohibition smugglers. Others say it's nonsense cooked up for spooky tours. But the lodge has never denied the tunnels exist. They just don't address the question. If it's all harmless myth, why did the city cancel proposed renovations twice without explanation? Why does every conversation about the lodge feel like dropping a stone down a well and waiting for a splash that never comes? Standing outside, watching tourists snap photos they don't understand, I felt the ground hum, a vibration like gears turning far below my feet. Maybe Boston's greatest secret isn't hidden in some forgotten attic or dusty museum vault. Maybe it sleeps directly beneath the city, and the Grand Lodge is the lock that's kept it from waking. And what comes next isn't rumor or speculation. It's fact. And once you hear it, you won't be able to ignore it. To understand why the lodge feels less like a building and more like a verdict, you have to wind the clock back nearly 3 centuries. 1733. Boston is a port of mud streets and salt wind, and the first officially recognized Masonic lodge in America receives its charter from London. Names that would one day be etched into school textbooks appear in the margins of these records. Benjamin Franklin visiting, Paul Revere forging connections, John Hancock observed in correspondence that hints at alliances rather than attendance. None of it proves conspiracy, but it sharpens the edges of the question. By the late 19th century, Boston is drowning in progress, rail lines surging like veins through the city. On the ruins of an old waterfront warehouse, the Grand Lodge rises in 1899, a fortress of limestone and civic pride. The stated purpose: a headquarters, a library, a sanctum for ceremony. The unstated purpose, if there was one, slipped between the lines of paperwork. City archives hold the first thread. Construction budgets list a sum noticeably higher than the lodge's official financial disclosures. The difference isn't enormous, but it's deliberate. 20% unaccounted for, tagged only as non-standard structural reinforcement. Reinforcement for what? The earth beneath Boston is stable. No fault lines, no sinkholes. Yet the building has supports like a bunker. Blueprints from the period show empty rectangles tucked behind walls, shafts that lead nowhere, corridors abruptly cut short, labelled technical purpose in handwriting, so hurried it slants upward. An architect's note on the margin reads, orientation must remain true to charter. Orientation to what? No legend explains. Historians debate the intent. Pragmatic theory, hidden storage during eras when political tides turned hostile. Folklore, relics from Europe carried across the Atlantic, safeguarded from monarchies that wanted them erased. Scholastic speculation. Early Americans feared enemy spies, so they designed buildings like puzzles. Knowledge granted in increments. Access earned, not offered. Official statements dismiss all three, insisting there's nothing remarkable about the foundation. But in 1967, an attempt to modernize the heating system triggered a review. The documentation for that project was sealed until 2075. Not classified, not restricted, sealed as if disclosure requires time to lose relevance. There's no smoking gun here, just patterns that don't behave like accidents. A structure treated less as architecture and more like an heirloom. A span of history where records keep erasing themselves. If these anomalies were isolated, you could shrug them off. Old buildings attract rumours the way stone attracts moss. But the Grand Lodge collects them like a magnet, and none of them fall away. What comes next is the moment the floor under the story shifts, when architecture stops being history and starts behaving like intent. It begins with anomalies small enough to ignore until they start aligning like teeth in a gear. On the third floor of the Grand Lodge, past a hallway cordoned off as maintenance only, the ceiling blooms into a mosaic sky. At a glance, it's decoration. Cobalt tiles, constellations etched in brass. But none of those constellations match modern charts. Even the North Star is wrong. A retired astronomer who studied photographs before the lodge demanded they be deleted recognized the pattern. The night above Boston on December 16th, 1773, the eve of the Boston Tea Party. But even that isn't what holds the breath in your lungs. One star glows out of alignment, not a mistake but a marker, its position more akin to coordinates than astronomy. Why would a map of the sky point to somewhere on Earth? In the sub-basement, the air grows colder as if the building resents visitors. Here, in an alcove that looks unfinished, raw brick, exposed beams, stands a door that should not exist. No hinges, no handle, just a bronze plate that feels warmer than the wall around it. Etched into it, the familiar compasses and square symbol, but altered. The angles skewed, the edges sharpened like something meant to interlock. According to a forgotten restoration note from 1974, the plate responds to contact with metal colder than skin. The man who wrote that note left Boston soon after. The archive lists no forwarding address. There are modern witnesses, too. In 1997, a group of local historians calling themselves Boston Undercurrents received brief permission to film a documentary in the lodge's lower levels. The project evaporated in 2 weeks, officially for lack of funds. Unofficially, members stopped returning calls. One responded once by letter, 2 sentences long. We found chambers designed for functions that no longer exist. Some floors move when you breathe. Fragments of their field notes survived. Room barren, no dust, acoustics unnatural, voices echo before they speak. Floor flexes downward. Pressure activated, ritual dais. Ceiling grid suggests mechanism or containment. This doesn't read like myth-making, it reads like people trying to describe something outside their vocabulary. Then there's the security. Over the past 15 years, the lodge has quietly upgraded its surveillance 6 separate times. Sensors woven into molding, vibration detectors embedded in marble. Not standard equipment for a historic landmark. More like safeguards for something below it. None of this confirms the wildest theories. No treasure, no relics, no sleeping machinery waiting for a key. But every clue tilts the story the same direction. Inward, then down. Toward a space the lodge pretends isn't there. If this is superstition, it's astonishingly well funded. If it's coincidence, it's an army of them marching in step. And if it isn't either, then Boston's most enduring secret might not be hiding from history. It might be protecting it. Next comes the turn you don't see coming. The moment where doors without hinges start to matter, and myths begin to behave like evidence. 2013, a transformer failure on Tremont Street drops the neighborhood into a blackout. 3 minutes of darkness, hardly news in a century-old grid. Yet something happens that no utility report can explain. Security footage from a nearby deli shows the pavement outside the Grand Lodge rise in sections like segments of a lid easing upward. Not chaotic, not random, synchronized, each slab lifting a fraction of an inch, then settling as power returns. City inspectors blamed thermal expansion, but thermal expansion doesn't follow choreography. Then comes 2018. A whistleblower leaks correspondence between the city's Cultural Preservation Office and lodge representatives. The term Meridian Vault appears 5 times. Nothing sensational, no dramatic claims, just bureaucracy trembling at the edges. Continued protection is required for cultural material not suitable for exhibition. access restricted to signatories of the original charter or successors thereof. When confronted, both parties dismissed the letters as fabrications. Yet forensic analysis of the paper and ink revealed era-consistent aging and no signs of digital alteration. The official stance hasn't budged. Nothing lies beneath the lodge except old drainage and service tunnels. But the timeline frays with every attempt to straighten it. Why did the US National Archives request access in 1976, the bicentennial year, only for the record of that request to vanish? Why does the Department of the Interior maintain a closed file on the building marked Heritage Exception, Conditional? Heritage exceptions are reserved for places where disclosure could alter national narrative. Some historians whisper about artifacts sealed before the Republic knew what it would become. Early drafts, unratified agreements, correspondence that might redraw the silhouettes of the Founding Fathers. If any of that is true, the Meridian Vault isn't a treasure room. It's a pressure point. A fulcrum where the story Americans tell about themselves could tilt. Others believe the vault is not a room at all, but a mechanism. The rising sidewalks, the pressure-sensitive floors, the constellations that map time instead of space. A design meant to move, to open when specific conditions are met. Perhaps astronomical, perhaps political. A machine asleep waiting for alignment. And then there's the possibility hardest to entertain, that the vault safeguards nothing tangible, that it contains knowledge, names, dates, agreements, a ledger that, if revealed, would force textbooks to be rewritten and monuments to be reconsidered. History's unedited draft. Maybe that's why the lodge stands as it does, immovable in a city that never stops reinventing itself. Not hiding a secret, bearing it, supporting it like a keystone so the structure of the nation doesn't shift. So the question stops being what is down there. The real question is why it was ever created. To protect the past, to steer the future, or to ensure that some truths never have a present. The Grand Lodge remains silent. Boston moves on around it, unaware or unwilling. But some nights when the air is cold enough to sharpen sound, the stone seems to exhale. A low, measured groan like gears settling in the dark. Maybe the vault has already opened. Maybe it's waiting for someone. Or maybe it was never meant to open at all, because if the wrong page of history sees daylight, the story of America might not survive the edit.